Welcome to the mini lecture, What is Literary Theory?, which goes along with Module 1 on English 3100. This lecture draws from two assigned readings, Theory Before Theory by Peter Berry, Everything You Wanted to Know About Critical Theory But Were Afraid to Ask by Lois Tyson. I'll be moving between these two readings. Berry's focuses more on the history of English language studies, and Lois Tyson focuses specifically on what it means to use critical theory. So first, a brief and quick history of English literature as a field of study. The most important thing to take away is that English literature as a field of study is a fairly recent phenomenon. English as a field of study was first introduced in Britain in the 1820s, so only about 200 years ago, as a means of expanding access to higher education beyond just the very elite landed white men. It also was a way to introduce more practical subjects into college curriculum, and it was believed it would get students invested in the history of their country. So early English courses were a mix of literary study of figures like Shakespeare and the study of classical languages like Latin, Roman, and Greek. In the United States, English emerged as a field of study even more recently at the end of the 19th century and focused initially on the ability to recite specific key texts and the ability to replicate the style of these texts in your own writing. So you can see in both countries, English was intended, as Berry argues, as a means of creating a secular religion, a means of sharing national ideas through a focus on text considered central to national identity. After World War I in the United States, American literature as a specific focus emerged as a result of the patriotic feeling of having come out of the Great War and part of a desire to measure progress against a national history. Literary theories, however, have a much longer history, and Berry kind of quickly goes through some key moments, starting with Aristotle's Poetics. Aristotle wrote about the audience's experience of drama, how they experienced tragedies versus comedies when they went to the theater. In 1508, Sir Philip Sidney argued in Apology for Poetry that reading should be pleasurable. So both of these, if we think of these as early theories, are focused on the experience of reading or experiencing drama. Samuel Johnson in the 18th century was the first person to write studies of specific writers. He wrote about Shakespeare. The Romantic poets, Keats, Shelley, and others, developed their own theories based on the writing they were doing, their own poetry and the poetry of others. They argued poetry should help us see the world for the first time again. Writing can help us see things we didn't realize we saw or felt. And they argued for what they called negative capability, which was that the idea that the experience of reading is what is prized, even if you don't understand the meaning or clear message. So you see a movement here from a focus on pleasure and experience and our own experience of reading to thinking about texts as maybe something that aren't open to everyone, that need people to interpret them. In the 1920s and 1930s, we had the rise of what's called new criticism, which we'll talk briefly about in a couple modules. But what's important to know now is that new criticism believed we should study literature without context. We shouldn't worry about the historical context. We shouldn't worry about philosophical ideas that we might raise when reading the text. And we shouldn't worry about the history of the language used. New criticism, in some ways, can be seen as putting outside of literary theory the things that literary theory and critical theory of the 1960s onwards put back in. So what are these words we're using when we talk about critical theory? Here's some key definitions from Tyson. A critic is the reader who analyzes and possibly judges a literary work. Literary criticism is when we evaluate a text using a specific type of theory, when we offer an assessment, or when we comment on the quality or character of a type of literary work. So all of us are literary critics and doing literary criticism when we say if we liked a film, when we talk about a book we liked or didn't like, or as we will do in this class, when we evaluate a text using a specific type of theory. Critic, literary criticism, the word critic has really taken on a negative connotation. We often think of criticism as being critical, and we think of being critical as just taking a negative approach to something. However, being critical just means looking closely and being thoughtful about how a text works. It's not negative or positive necessarily. Critical theory tries to explain the assumptions and values upon which literary criticism rests. Basically, what kind of approach are you taking when you analyze something? So I think these three key terms are really helpful in thinking about what is literary criticism and what does it mean to use critical theory. Reading a text through a theoretical lens is something that we are going to practice in this course. And Lois Tyson argues in her chapter that, quote, there is no such thing as a non-theoretical interpretation. We may not be aware of the theoretical assumptions that guide our thinking, but those assumptions are there nonetheless. Her point is that we always come to anything we read or watch or listen to with our own set of experiences and ideas about the world. When we read something, when we watch a movie, when you watch a TV show, when you watch a TikTok, you are engaging with these texts and making meaning based on our own ideas about the world, our own theories about the world. A theory, if you think about it in a scientific context, it's just an argument you are making that could explain why something is or why something occurs the way it is. All of us have pre-existing theories about the world based on our background, our upbringing, our experiences, our faith, our gender, our sexuality, our race, where we grew up, our family, our traditions. We're always using these to interpret and make meaning. If you and a friend watch a TV show together, and at the end you have different ideas about what the ending meant, you each have a different theory about what happened. So think about theories as lenses to apply to a text. The theories used here are asking you to focus on certain things in specific ways. This is not about forcing something on the text, but if we really think about lenses the way that Tyson offers, we think about them as different literal lenses and glasses, we see different things with different theoretical lenses. So liberal humanism is one lens or one set of theory. It's one way to describe the set of assumptions which were broadly applied to literature before the move towards critical theory in the second half of the 20th century. In academia, generally theory by itself, if we say, oh, he's using theory, has come to mean these critical theories that reject the ideas of liberal humanism. So liberal humanism is an approach, it's a method, but the people who use this did not identify themselves as liberal humanists. They often saw themselves as simply reading or responding to a text. However, it's helpful to catalog the assumptions they followed in their analysis. Most of the critical theories used presently in literary analysis are in many ways responding to and/or rejecting this set of assumptions. So what are these assumptions? Well, first, good literature is timeless. A text like Shakespeare, the liberal humanists say, or an author like Shakespeare, is always going to be good literature. Good literature, the literary text, contains its own meaning within itself. You detach it from its context to understand what it means. The meaning is self-evident. The reason that good literature is timeless is also because human nature never changes, according to liberal humanists. Individuality is unchanging. So we can look at texts from the past and they have a timeless quality because what it means to be human hasn't changed. Now, immediately we can imagine the criticisms of this approach, both to the idea that literature does not change and the idea that human nature does not change. Liberal humanism believes that the purpose of literature is to share key values and enhance life, but not as propaganda. Rather, the form and content in literature fuse in an organic way to deliver key ideas. The literature should be sincere. It should show these ideas, not tell them. For liberal humanists, then, the job of the critic or the job of criticism is to basically lead the reader to the idea or the key concepts in the text. Remember, the text in this view has a key values inside of it. You sort of have to crack it open and show it to the reader. So this liberal humanist approach is one that we may have or view ourselves when we read a book. We may think that good literature is timeless. We may think that a book from 100 years ago can be read with the same context as today. This is often the way that literature is taught in a K through 12 classroom. In the turn to theory after World War II, critical theory began to attack the assumptions made by the liberal humanist approach to theory. The 1960s especially saw a growth in theories attacking established approaches to analysis. Many of these grew out of the activist movements of the era. This includes feminist criticism, Marxist criticism, critical race theory or Black studies. Others reflected shifts in critical theory overall, such as structuralism and post-structuralism in the 1970s. Broadly, critical theory post-1960, there are big themes that recur. One, many things we believe are absolute and fixed are actually unstable and changing. Things like race, gender, values. We often understand these as fixed because it's helpful to believe that, but critical theory argues that they're constantly shifting and changing. Critical theory also sees our present ideas as always based on previous ideas. They are not timeless. They're rather, critical theory would argue, the result of the past changing to create the present. Language, critical theory argues, is how we understand the world, and our view of the world is shaped by language. Language, in essence, makes the world. There is no definite meaning or fixed meaning of a text in critical theory, and critical theory asks us to distrust all totalizing theories. When we start to think about this in the frame of literature, we come to the idea of the death of the author. In the past, the focus of literary analysis is about the author's biography and how it informs their choice in the text. But since the middle of the 20th century, since the turn towards, quote, theory, the shift has been to how the reader responds to the texts and the structures in the text and how these relate to the culture around the text. So authorial intention means examining the author and theorizing what they intended or meant in the text. But the death of the author has asked us to turn away from authorial intention and instead focus on our own analytical response to the text. We can never truly know the full intention of the author. Even if we read an interview with the author and we read their stated intention, there may be things in the text that the author did not intend, but they are there. And so we are shifting from authorial intention. Often we want to say, well, this is what so-and-so meant, to what the text says and what we interpret in the text. So the author, we're not killing the author, literally, of course, but the death is a death of the author as the focus of our analysis and a shift to the text and how we interpret that text. Relatedly, there are two ways we can read a text. When we read with the grain, we interpret the text as it seems to want to be interpreted. Tyson gives the example in The Great Gatsby of reading the text as a romantic text, as a text about holding up the romance of Gatsby and Daisy. Reading with the grain means interpreting the text as the text does not explicitly intend, something the text may not explicitly understand. Now you'll notice here, we're talking about the text as if it's a person. And what we're saying is that the text makes an argument. There are things that any book wants you to feel or take away as clear messages. But there are other things the text may also say that it does not explicitly intend to say. Some of this might be about changes in context. You might see racism in a text that did not believe itself as racist when it was published, but it also might be about the author and the text seeming to paint one character as a nice person, and we may interpret it differently. However you read a text, you're always supporting your theories with the text. Either approach, you are going back to what the text says. You're not importing ideas that are not in the text. So the key in critical theory is always, what does the text say? And how can I connect that to broader ideas in the culture, broader contextual ideas? And these are the kinds of things we'll be discussing throughout this course.